like I was so nicely introduced, my name is Courtney Kimball, and I just wanted to start with this screen and kind of go through a little bit about the process of how we started One Common Thread. Um, uh, First of all, I'll start with our mission statement here at One Common Thread. It's empowering women by developing self-worth with an opportunity to work and receive a sustainable income and to set a new standard for them and their children. And we do that one hexagon at a time. I am so excited to be here with you all today. I'm really excited that one of our quilts was won in a giveaway online that we did with a makeup artist that was so sweet, and she promoted One Common Thread, and we were able to get a lot of followers from that. And so how fun that you have one of our quilts right there with you tonight. So just to let you know a little bit about myself, my name is Courtney. I am here hugging the young woman who helped me, who kind of inspired the whole idea of starting One Common Thread. As soon as this young woman, her name is Scarlett, she was looking for a way to make $5. They were going, I knew Scarlett just not very well, but a little bit from just interacting with her at church activities. And when my husband, well, I should scoop back a little bit more. When he first introduced the idea of moving to San Pedro Sula, Honduras, I thought that sounded like a fantastic adventure. It sounded really fun. And then I looked up Honduras, San Pedro Sula specifically. And for those of you that are sitting next to your computer right now, if you got on and searched San Pedro Sula, Honduras, you're going to see a lot of frightening photos and a lot of scary pictures, mostly of dead bodies, because in honesty, it's a very, very dangerous place. So that really changed how I was looking at this adventure. And so I went ahead and, of course, agreed to the whole moving down there with our children. And, but we really stayed away from what was going on around us. I was homeschooling my kids. My husband initially had said it was just going to be 1 year. And so I was just kind of sheltering them and trying just to keep them safe. Like it was said, we took 6 of our 9 children with us. We have 8 living children. And so our 2 oldest were left back in the States because they were already college age and off doing their own thing. So they didn't need to be with us. But we had those 6 younger kids with us, and it was a little bit frightening. So when Scarlett introduced herself and through my terrible Spanish, we went through a little conversation of her asking me for a way to make $5. And, just not that I don't value money, I value it very much, but I'm thinking, oh, I'll just give you $5. And that wasn't her purpose. Her purpose was she wanted to make $5. And I didn't need a babysitter. I had a lot of kids and a lot of babysitting age children, and I didn't need a housekeeper. We were already employing women that were cleaning as I walked around the house. I mean, they would clean the floor as I made a footprint. So we just had so much help already. And so I was working on a quilt, though, that I was making for my oldest daughter, who was getting engaged. And I hadn't taken my sewing machine with me to Honduras. And I had just learned how to do English paper piecing, the hexagon quilts. And so I was looking at the pattern that I had kind of just downloaded from the internet, and it required about 1,800 hexagons. And that part didn't sound as fun to me as, putting the quilt all together. So the idea came to me, Scarlett, you can help me by making some of these hexagons. I don't know how many of you are very familiar with English paper piece hexagons, but you have to first start out with the paper. And you have to cut a bunch of hexagons. Luckily, here in the States, we have hexagon cutters that we can use. And so we go through it and we cut all these little pieces of hexagon papers. And then you have to take your fabric and you have to wrap it around and then do like a little basting stitch to get your finished hexagon. And then you're going to want to leave your paper in there until it's all sewn together. I just took this one out for right now. But so I just handed her some scraps of fabric and handed her a bunch of little hexagons that I had already pre-cut out with my puncher, and I gave her some thread and needle, and it was an interesting process of going through, and I just got her in my car one day and showed her how to do this. Well, within a few hours, she called me back, and she and her mom, of course, was helping her. She made 500 hexagons in about 3 hours time, which was pretty amazing. I've timed myself now and I can get to about 80 hexagons in 1 hour. So the fact that she made so many was pretty amazing. And so I didn't know what to pay her. And so I actually paid her $20. And I thought, oh, I hope this is enough. Well, I knew that pricing for things in Honduras was different than here in the States. But when I gave her that $20, she instantly began to cry. And then she went home and showed her mother. And then her mom, she called me the very next day and she said, would you mind if I shared your phone number with my mom and my cousins and my aunts? They're all wondering if they can sew too. And I thought at that moment, I don't need a million hexagons. I just need, the 1800 to make this quilt for my daughter. But I could see the need. And so I said, well, hold on to that thought. Let me call my sister. So here's my sister on the screen here. Her name is Kim, and she lives in Utah. And so I called her and said, do you think that there's any way that we could market and sell these women? If I was to have a bunch of them make these hexagons, could we sell them? Well, my sister's not really a quilter or doesn't sew or anything. And I think that's because she's just much more organized person than I am. I was always the one that had nervous energy as a child. So I was sent to my grandma's quite often for a few weeks at a time during the summer. And my grandma is the one who really spent the time teaching me how to sew. And so anyhow, my sister said, let's just give this a try. I don't know if it will work or not, but let's just do it. So we started off with 8, and then quickly after that, there was about 10 women that we started making hexagons. And these were all either Scarlett's aunts or her mother or her cousins. So here we are with a picture of my sister and I, and at the beginning of One Common Thread. I'm going to go to the next slide. As I said, the first things first, we're both moms. My sister, Kim, she has one daughter. She just turned 15 years old. Her beautiful daughter, Lily, who is severely handicapped. She can't walk or talk. And Kim spends most of her day taking care of Lily's needs. I, on the other hand, was blessed with a lot of children. And these are our 8 of our 9 children here. And so we have in total 7 girls and 2 boys. So we feel really privileged to have been blessed so much in our lives with these kids. And so we took the 6 younger of this crowd with us to Honduras, and they really became my volunteers, my helpers in everything that I did with One Common Thread. And really, honestly, my sister and I didn't know if we were starting a business or a for-profit or doing a nonprofit. And so we went ahead and started. We were just funding it all out of our pocket. So let's see here. Here are some of the statistics of Honduras. And I hope that this kind of helps you understand a little bit why we felt such a need to help. And at any time you need to interrupt me, just let me know. But I'm just going to kind of go through these slides with you. The homicide rate in Honduras is 5 times higher than in the world than what the World Health Organization considers an epidemic. And that's because children and women are actually both very expendable down there. And in Honduras, the femicide rate, it ranks 5th out of 111 countries. It has only 5% of crimes that are committed against women are ever investigated, let alone prosecuted. Women are often raped or discarded if they're not wanted anymore. So the situation is dire. It's very, very sad, and it's very drastic. 60%, I think it's actually 65% now of the population live in poverty in Honduras. And so that's why we see a lot of caravans. I don't know if you've been watching the news, but we do have an epidemic going on with our border. And I don't want to get into politics tonight, but I am a South Texan. I live in San Antonio, Texas. And so this does very much affect our day-to-day life with the influx of immigrants. And so that was another thing, is that Honduras is one of the highest countries that are people that are coming to the United States. And so this was my effort to help people in their own country. And I really, I've always looked at myself as somebody that if I really was to get into humanitarian work, I would help the people around me right here in the States. And I have, and so is my sister. My sister does amazing projects in her community. And I've done some projects with Habitat and Humanity and things. But really, we are so privileged in this country to have so much, so many services that are available for people. I know that we are not a perfect society or perfect economy, and I really don't want to get into politics, but in all honesty, there is nothing for these women in Honduras to go back and to rely on. There is no kind of economic help, any kind of homes for the women to go to if they're being abused. I encouraged one woman that I had met. This was before I had started One Common Thread. And this is when my eyes really started opening to how drastic the situation was down there. But I really encouraged one woman after she was raped, please go to the police. I had a very, very strong feeling that those crimes need to be reported. Women can't stay silent. And she went to the police and had was victimized again. And I don't know if it was actually a policeman or who it was, but it was a very sad situation. So I think that that's where realizing that these were women, I'm a woman, these were mothers, I'm a mother. These were the common threads that were pulling me together with these women. I really, honestly, when I first got there, did not understand the plight that was going on until I started to get that to know them. And, like the saying goes, if you know me, you'll love me. And that's how it is with these women. If you know them, you'll love them. They really are just the neatest ladies. So I'm just going to kind of go on. Here are some of our women. We are now at about 80. Like I said, we started off with about 8 to 10 at the very beginning. And we have 80 women now who depend completely on their earnings to support their family, which is kind of amazing that they can do all of this from their home. And that's the biggest key. I mean, we really started in 2019 and started getting all of our paperwork for becoming a nonprofit, because I saw the importance. Every dollar that we got in, I could see how that dollar could feed a baby that day. $1 can feed a baby the formula that they need. And so, if I was to give up just having my toes done once a month, I could make sure a baby was fed every single day for 1 month. So it was really became a personal cause for me. But then as I got to know the women, I just became so infatuated with their stories, of learning more about them and finding so many commonalities that we have. I don't want to have to bore you with all of their stories. I actually think you'd be actually fascinated, but I just don't think we have the time tonight. But our first one here, Damaris, as you can see, she is a high school graduate. That is almost unheard of in the slums of Honduras. Education in Honduras stops at 6th grade. For public education. If you want to have a higher education, your parents are going to have to pay the $30 a month it costs to enroll into a private school. $30 a month does not sound like much, but like Scarlett's dad was only making $30 a week. That's a huge portion of funds for these people in poverty, especially if your family has more than one child. If they have 2 children, that's half your family's income. If you have 3 children, it just continues. And in all honesty, they have more children because for them, it's their only source of retirement. I know that sounds crazy, but really, that's the way that these women will be able to not be homeless on the street, is if they have a child that will take them in. Glenda is the next woman. She's a breast cancer survivor. She's 5 years out of remission. But once she was diagnosed with cancer, her husband of 24 years left her. because she was not having any children before that, and he knew that she wasn't going to be able to have children after that. Mariella is a great story because after she got her feet on the ground with One Common Thread, she was able to buy some clothing to be able to apply for the right job. And now she is actually working on a construction site with managing like human resources. And that is pretty amazing because she does not have any kind of degree, not even a high school certificate. Some of these women, Anna at the very bottom, she's suffering with gastric cancer right now. It will probably be terminal. We're trying to help her with some treatments, but there's only so much that they're willing to do. There is kind of a socialized medicine down there, but it's an interesting thing where the doctor will see you, but any prescription he gives you, any kind of medical service or tests that you need, all have to be paid for. So if she goes to the doctor and the doctor says, okay, you need to go have an MRI, granted, MRIs are a lot cheaper down there. They cost about $80 US dollars, but $80 US dollars for a family in poverty, it just doesn't happen. So we try to help her get the testing that she needs, the exams, and also the medication. So they can boast that they have a free like socialized medicine, but it only covers the doctor that's a very nice person that's giving their time. Nanny has been abused so many times that because this meeting is being recorded, I just don't want to share too much of her story just for her personal integrity. She's an amazing young woman. She was about 17 in this picture. She's now about 20 years old, and she has 2 children and no husband. Okay, I'm going to move on to our next slide here, and hopefully, I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. So we started off by just doing hexagon kits, and our kits are shown right there in the middle. We do a lot of grandma's flower garden, which is a very popular design. All of our fabric is donated, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but we started off by just doing kits, and that was great for my group of friends, but for my sister who does not sew, it was not so great for her group of friends, who of course were the first ones to support us. And so we started making quilt tops and then finished quilts. I cannot tell you what a challenge it was, because there is no word. I'm not sure if it's the whole Spanish language or just in the Honduras, but there's no word for quilting in Honduras. So every time I would go to a store and I was trying to find somebody who could quilt our quilts, I knew that if I was to bring all these quilt tops back up to the States, these women would never make any money on these quilts. So I had to find a quilter in Honduras, which was kind of a funny situation because it was hard for me to find someone, especially when you're looking at a population where 65% of them are in poverty. That means I'm only looking at 45% of the population, and to find one person that owns a long arm quilting machine was almost impossible. So I started by going to fabric stores and then upholstery places, or anyone who did any sort of curtains and linens and things like that. And I was trying to explain, because a lot of them had really those old time quilting machines that, from like 1975, I'm not kidding. They were just pure metal and they're pushing them around. And of course I wanted a computerized long arm machine to do our quilting. And so I would try to explain to the women, or the people I was talking to, about what a long arm quilting machine was. And of course I would show them a picture and they're like, oh, it's a computer. No, it's not a computer. It actually is a machine. Actually, we'll do this. And I'm trying to explain it to them. And finally, the idea came to my mind. I totally feel like it was divine inspiration. The thought came to me is, it's going to be a sewing machine that's so big, it will take up one room. And once I explained it that way, this one lady said, haha, I know of a lady who knocked out a wall in her house for her sewing machine. I said, that sounds like the lady I'm looking for. I found the one and only lady that I know of in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, who owns a computerized long arm sewing machine. And the reason why she owns it is because she used to live in New York. She did upholstery, drapes, and quilting for hotels for a woman in New York, and then moved back to Honduras and brought a machine back with her and started her own business. She speaks a tiny bit of English. And she is one of the neatest women. The minute I told her what I was doing for the women in the slums, she said, I want to give you the cheapest possible price because you are helping my people. My own people don't help my people. So if you're going to help them, I'm going to do this for what it costs us to do it. And so unbelievably, all of our quilts are finished off. And they not only quilt them, they also do the border, the trim fabric on the around the quilt. And all of them are done between $12 to $25, depending on the size of the quilt. So all of you long arm quilters out there, you know that we are getting a stinking good deal on that. And that's because this woman is Honduran. She employs Honduran women. And so it also helps her women keep jobs going. And she's in turn giving my women the opportunity to make more money on their quilts. So that's just been amazing. So we have branched out to table runner kits, finished table runners. We have these cute little jackets. Every time I see a new jacket that somebody is wearing on Instagram, a star or somebody, I'm always trying to figure out who the designer is and get pictures of that. And I just take that right back down to our quilter in Honduras, and she finds women who can make these jackets for us with the quilt tops that we provide. So all of these have been 100% made by women in Honduras. If they aren't our makers in the slums, they're makers from other slums with our other woman who is sewing down there. We have now lots of fun bags and backpacks and things like that you can also find on our website. This is just an example of some of the quilts that we've made. Earlier during the show and tell, I saw a very similar beautiful quilt that was made in a very similar design as this big heart quilt that we have here. I loved it. So I think the woman said she had made it for her grandson and his wife for their wedding or something. And she hadn't quite gotten it finished, but she had it finished now when they're moving into their new home. And I thought, oh, that looks like one of ours, just a little bit different. And I love it because actually that's where all of our designs come from. Luckily, I have a 20-year-old son who is able to, he programmed a hexagon design program on my computer. And I'm just always copying and asking people, if we can try to make their quilt into a hexagon design. So these are just a couple of examples here on this photo. Oops. Sorry, before we start this is just a little 3-minute video that when we've done a couple of news stories, and I just thought this was great because it gives you a little bit more video footage of us in Honduras. So I just want to show this to y'all.
Well, a Utah woman now living in one of the most dangerous cities in the world is helping to bring women out of poverty. Now, she has taught them a skill that is giving them new hope.
Tonight, news specialist Dan Rascone takes us up close with one common thread. Dan?
In the slums of Honduras, I'm told many of these mothers are living on about $20 a week. Courtney Kimball, who's living in Honduras, came up with an idea that is now doubling or tripling their weekly income. And she's teamed up with her sister right here in Salt Lake.
This is one of our better quilts.
On display in Kim Fry's home,
These are all hand stitched.
are some amazing and colorful quilts.
As you can see, the tightness of the stitches.
All handmade, thousands of miles away, right here in what is called the Borro, or slums of San Pedro Sula, Honduras, in Central America, considered to be one of the most dangerous cities in all the world.
When you go into the slums or the Bordo, you have to go with an armored guard. You can't go by yourself.
We are now at the Bordo.
But for Kim's sister, Courtney Kimball, who lives in Honduras, coming to the Bordo is an everyday thing. That's because this is where some of Courtney's dearest friends live, women and mothers living in poverty.
The conditions are very grim.
Trying to make ends meet.
They're living day by day. And So they don't have cupboards full of food like we have in the States.
For many of these women, there is new hope. Courtney has taught 20 of them her skill of sewing. As a result, these women are now hand sewing quilts.
And we provide the pattern.
Then Kim, who is living here in Salt Lake, sells the quilts online so the women can make money. Courtney and Kim call it One Common Thread, an idea that is now in the works of becoming a nonprofit organization.
There's very few jobs for women, and this is just an opportunity that we saw that we could help these women.
They can bring home rice, they can bring home bread, they can bring home milk, they can afford the formula. Whereas that gives them a sense of pride because they're taking care of their families.
Courtney and her family have been living in Honduras for 3 years because of her husband's business. She started this idea after a young woman came to her wanting to earn money for bus fare. It just grew from there. The joy comes in seeing the change in these women's lives.
They are learning a skill, they're learning how to talk to people, they're very excited about the things that they're making.
We've really created something that they can truly love and they can truly enjoy doing. They actually have a future, whereas before they didn't.
Courtney and Kim say 100% of the profits go to the women making those quilts. Right now, they're selling about 3 a week. For more information about One Common Thread and to check out these quilts, go to our website, ksltv.com.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was one of the very first news exposés that was done on us, and that was released on March 5th, 2020. So what happened a week later? The world ended and everybody went into hiding. And it was a very crazy time. We hadn't gained enough traction. And so I was very nervous about continuing. And of course, my family was coming back to the States about 3 weeks after that because the U.S. Embassy had contacted all the expats living in Honduras. And they said, if you can go home, please go home. There's 100 respirators in Honduras, and you will not get any preferential treatment. So if you need help, or if you are with children or older people, go back to the States. So in case you do get sick, you'll have a place, you can go to your local hospital. So of course we left right away, and we took as much as we could, or my family and I took as much as we could get back to the States, and we started trying to really work on the website and getting things sold. And it became very chaotic. If things were chaotic in the US, let me just tell you, around the world, especially in developing countries like Honduras, the ripple effect is just astronomical. They started living where you could go out one time a week. And actually, I was one time every 10 days, depending on the last number of your identification card. Well, at that time, this is the craziest coincidence. And again, I think it was divine intervention. About 4 months before that, I had always been paying the women in cash because that was the fastest way to get the money to them. They needed the money right away to buy their food. And so, but I started feeling very uneasy. Of course, it required me taking cash into these slum projects. And I did not like that idea because I knew in a matter of time, we'd start being known as the gringos with money. And it's already a dangerous place. And so even though I was going in all the time with our driver, who was also our bodyguard, I knew that we needed to get a better way to pay these women. So about 4 to 6 months before COVID hit, I asked each of our women, and at that time we only had about 20 women. I told them all they needed to go to the bank and get their own bank account. Well, to get your own bank account, you had to have your own identification card. Nobody had identification cards that live in poverty. So that meant a 3-day wait at a government building in Honduras to get your ID. I still require them. They still all have to have an ID, and they all have to go get a bank account. Well, what a blessing when COVID hit that these women could then show me what they were making. They would take pictures of their hexagons, take pictures of their quilts, and they could still be paid through bank transfers to their bank. What a blessing that was for them. And we were able to keep them going because so many of them, even if they had any kind of part-time work, some of the women were making food plates for security guards. Well, now those security guards were all let off because COVID hit and nobody's working their regular jobs like they had been. So then the security wasn't needed. And so then the plates of food weren't needed. And so, like I said, then we had this huge influx. Everybody wanted to sew. And so then we had to start a waiting list, and we had to try to start finding ways to sell more of our product and or get grants and apply for funding from, we've never received any kind of federal grant, but we do apply to a lot of family foundations who have an interest of helping people in poverty. So we've been very fortunate with a lot of generosity that way. And like I said, we try to get every single penny back to these women, even up and above what they're making. I'm going to show you just this little, it's a 30-second video here of how we put
Okay, so here I am. I'm sitting down with this quilt kit. It's called Vanderbilt's Garden. So it's one of our more popular kits online. Usually it is going to be made out of this grandma garden design. So it's just a whole bunch of flowers. It's super easy because you can just sew each flower individually and then start putting them all together. So, and we have this kit in a couple of different colors, sometimes just all in blues, all in pinks, all in reds. This one happens to be all jewel tones. And so we call it Vanderbilt's Garden. So what I did is when I received all of the hexagons from this batch, I put them all inside a big, we have huge Tupperwares that we store them in, and we mix them all up. And so with all of the jewel tone colors, this time out of this batch, I've been able to make 4 different kits. And so even though you are buying one of these kits, you might not get the exact one in the picture, but you're gonna get one that is almost exactly the same because they're made with the same hexagons. You just might have, 5 of these prints in one kit and maybe only 2 in another kit or something. So they don't come out exactly even, but they come out looking almost exactly like the picture. So I hope that helps you understand a little bit how we divide up.
Okay, so that is a little bit how we put them together. On the right side is a beautiful Christmas scrap quilt of the Grandma's Flower Garden made by our maker Oneida. Oneida just had a devastating loss of twins on August 4th. They were due in August, and they were born prematurely, and they both survived for a few hours, one longer than the other, and then she lost both of them. And right away, of course, my heart goes out to her. Coincidentally, I actually lost a set of one of my twins on August 4th back in 2015. My youngest is a twin, and I lost her twin sister Quinn on August 4th. So it was just, I always just am so amazed how things work the way they do. Oneida has my heart. I just love her so much because I could just feel her pain. And it was very sobering to be a part of that experience of helping her bury her twins. Even though I was here in San Antonio at the time, I was able to help her get the medical help that she needed for those babies. And then, of course, go through the whole burial process, which is very fast in Honduras. It's a federal law that if you pass away within 24 hours, you have to be buried. If you're not, because there's no embalming down there. Of course, I don't think that is probably the same rules for those who are upper class, but for, of course, everyone in poverty, they have 24 hours to get their loved one buried. So it was very fast and can be quite horrific for a mother in mourning. Oh, this is just another example. We see a lot of babies in boxes down there because that is a way they can keep their child out of the dirt. And this is sweet little Genesis. So right when I saw Genesis, she's one of our maker's daughters. We went straight to the store and got her little sit-in toy so that she could be having fun and not be sitting in a box all day while her mom was working. As you can see all the hexagon papers in the background there. Our main goal is to give back as much as we can, 100%, we say, because there's nothing that goes in our pocket. Of course, there's some shipping costs and a little bit of printing costs, but usually I can get those things donated by friends, where I will call a friend of mine and say, I need this much to cover. the shipping, or I need to be able to cut, I want to run some ads on Facebook. Would you be willing to pay for this? So I try not to use the money that's given to us by donors online. Usually I get those things covered. So that's why we can say we're 100% of our donations go back to our women. At the beginning, my sister and I, we were covering all the expenses for those 10 women. And then we realized there was just so many more women that we could help. And so that's when we realized we needed to really buckle down and become businesswomen, which neither of us really were. And we have kind of fallen into learning how to run a business, a nonprofit, and how to do advertising and how to get the best bang for our buck. And I had a really nice gentleman who came in and said, I will pay all of your advertising. And for the first 2 years, he paid $40,000 a year in advertising straight out of his pocket. It was such a blessing because it really helped us get our feet on the ground, and it gave me time to learn how to do it. But once I learned how these advertising companies were using the money, I said, you know what, let's cut out that part and let's just go straight to the ad. I will do the designing. I've learned now from working with these advertising companies that he had hired, and our advertising budget has gone way down because we were able to cut out the advertising company and do all of our ads ourselves. And plus it helps. My daughter just graduated in advertising, so I get a lot of extra help from her. This is one of our makers, really quick.
Hey everybody, this is Carla. We are visiting her. She's one of our very newest makers, so we wanted to see what her house looked like. So we are here in her home, and this is her sweet little son, Mateo. And I just want to show you, look behind us at these walls. These are just cardboard walls. And the roof obviously is in very poor condition. And half of the house has cement, where the other half of the house is just dirt. La tierra firma. So we really want to help her. She's in a pretty desperate, need situation. She doesn't have a spouse or anybody to help with the bills, and it's just she and her mom that live here. And so she's brand new, and it's going to take her a while, but we want to help her. So please look and see if there's something you can purchase from any of our makers, because basically we're a co-op and everything helps each one of these women.
Carla's situation is quite desperate. She has cardboard walls, half her floor is cement, the other half is kind of broken up cement. That's very typical of how our women started off. And I don't know if you could see in that video, but there's also clotheslines inside the house. Honduras is a gorgeous country. If it had a stable government, it could be a wonderful vacation place. I know a lot of cruise ships stop in Roatan, which is an island of Honduras. And that's totally different. Roatan is safe. You'll be fine over there. Don't be dumb and you'll be great. If your cruise ship stops there, don't worry. But if you go to the mainland of Honduras, that's where it gets really dangerous. And that's how these people live, is just on dirt floors, and she has to dry her clothes inside of her house because the climate there is so rainy that it rains at least once a day. A lot like Hawaii. The things that we emphasize first is we always pay the women for their quilts. So they know that when they get a kit, they'll get a bag of material, and they'll get a design that they need to, that they might want to make. And we have all different designs on our website under tutorials. We don't try to make any money off of the designs. They're just designs that we've come up with, and we don't sell them. We just leave them for anybody who wants to do it. But it tells you exactly how much you would need of each fabric. And so we include the fabric kind of like a sew by numbers. Remember paint by numbers when you're a kid? That's kind of how they're doing their sewing. They will get a project and it will have a price on the top. They know exactly how much they're going to make. Any extra hexagons that they produce while they're making that quilt, they'll also be paid for those hexagons. So we pay them first of all through a deposit to their bank account. Then, of course, we sell their quilts for a little bit more on our website. The money then that is over the cost of the quilt, of what we've already paid her, goes back to building supplies. That's the very first thing. We want to get those women off of dirt floors, and we want to get a roof over their head that keeps out the elements, because with all of the rain every day, they need a new roof. And so that's the first thing we do. The walls, we're not as worried about because what they end up doing is they take whatever they had on their roof, they usually put it down on their walls. If they don't, though, we do actually replace their walls, as you'll see here in that third picture with sweet little Karen. So the first picture is Naomi and her kids. They're receiving those supplies. The second picture is Nanny with her second child. We make sure that all of the babies are getting formula. We always supplement the mother's milk because in most instances, the mothers just aren't having a very nutritious diet. And there's just only so much nutrients that the babies can get through. We always promote, of course, for them to breastfeed, but we also want them to supplement so that we can make sure that all these babies are growing healthy and strong and not suffering from stunting, which is very common in Honduras. The reason why the people are so short and so small is because they don't have the nutrients. So stunting is an epidemic down there. Everybody has at one point or another, depending on, how they were fed as children. Obviously Karen in the third photo, she's a 23-year-old woman who is so excited. This is her house, you guys. There is nothing more to this house. She shares a kitchen with 3 other ladies, but it's not a kitchen, it's an outdoor fire. So that's our next goal, is to enclose their kitchen area and put in a stove and hopefully a refrigerator. But as far as Karen goes, she feels very blessed that she has a bed and she's got drawers and she's got walls and a roof and she's living on cement. So these are our 3 main things. And then of course we go to eliminating indoor fires. Because it is so dangerous in Honduras, a lot of women will cook inside their homes because they're nervous about being out at dark. Honduras is very close to the equator, so no matter what, the sun's going to rise at 5:30 and it's going to set it at 5:30. It varies like 20 minutes throughout the year. So it's very early mornings and it's very early evenings. And so a rule that my family and I live by is to always try to be indoors by the time it gets dark, because when it gets dark, that just seems to be when everything gets a lot more dangerous down there. And so I try to do the same for these women, give them the opportunity to get the fire out of their home and get a stovetop in there so that it does wonders for their health, not only for themselves, but for their children. This is our sweet little Tanya. She's just kind of an abandoned child who was taken in by her aunt, and her aunt just watches over her, and her aunt couldn't afford to send her to school. And once we realized that she was not a child of her aunt's, that she was her niece, my sister especially just fell in love with Tanya and said, okay, I will start paying for her to go to school. Then we have another wonderful woman online. We couldn't get her into the school because all of the places were already filled. And so for Tanya to go to school, she had to go to another school that's about 20 minutes away, which requires a taxi ride. Well, I didn't want her in a taxi by herself with somebody. So we have a wonderful donor who pays for Tanya and also her older cousin, who's a young man, and they take a taxi over to this other school so that she can attend school. And she's learning English. So we think that that's pretty amazing. Irma, she's our very first maker that has started the university. And so we're super proud of her. She goes to the University of Honduras, which is amazingly within walking distance of the slum that we service the most. We service 3 different slum areas. Most of our women are in the one that is, I don't know if you saw in that very first video with Dan Rascon in Salt Lake City, but there was a big high rise in the background. Well, that's where I lived with my family. So that's how I first got involved with these people, was because we were look outside of our building. We lived on the 25th floor and we would just watch them. And my kids and I mean, especially during the first year when they were all homeschooled, we were just mesmerized at seeing how these people live, which is, I call perennial camping, because they're always camping. We love to see the seed that's planted. This is my sister with Genesis and Tanya back in 2019. And then this is a recent picture in 2023. We're following these kids. It's going to be years before we really see the fruits of our labors. We know that. And so we are dedicated because I don't think that we're going to have much success pulling our women where they are right now out of poverty, but we know we can pull their kids out of poverty. If we can keep their kids going to school and graduating from high school with a secondary education certificate, and then going on to, if not the university, maybe going to a trade school or receiving some sort of graduate certificate in salon or in a mechanic school or something. There are all kinds of ways that these kids can start pulling their parents out of the poverty. And so that's our goal. If we can just work on these kids, in turn, that will help our makers. It's all about hope. This is one of the very first quilts that our ladies made. And this is actually just a QR code to our website, where if any of you guys wanted to make a donation, you could donate today. Of course, we rely heavily on donations, but I did not want this to be a handout foundation. When I was living down there, I saw a lot of handout donation nonprofits, and I think they're great. You know, I think that they are really awesome about helping an immediate need that minute. But for teaching these people how to overcome the poverty that they're in, you have to teach them a skill. And I guess because my husband and I were entrepreneurs, that's just the way I've always kind of taught my kids. Work hard. Our family motto has always kind of been work hard, life's not fair. And I think that goes for anyone, everywhere. You can work really hard and things may not still work out, but I think that if you continue to persevere and you can get a skill, you can always find a way to provide dinner for your family. And so that's really what we're trying to teach these women. And you know what the best thing has been, which I did not even think about, because for me, it was all about helping women in poverty feed their children. It was about getting babies the food that they needed so they could grow. Those are the things as a mother that I was really concentrating on. But what's the coolest part was seeing how much these women grew with their self-esteem. I had one woman when I first met her. Her name's Joanna, beautiful woman, beautiful little girl. And she came up to me, and I did not know her. But her sister, she had 3 sisters who were already sewing for One Common Thread. And it's really funny because my Spanish is quite embarrassing. I can get by, but I always prefer to have my husband or my sister, who speaks very fluently, right next to me. And she pulled me aside and said she wanted to have a private conversation with me. And it was a miracle that I understood every single word she said, and which was basically, I just need money right now to feed my baby. And I'm too embarrassed to ask for help. But the way that she asked me was like this, ladies. Her head was down, she could hardly talk, and she was very nervous. And so I just grabbed her her cheeks and pulled her face up to look at me in the eyes, because I wanted her to let her know that I looked at her as an equal. And I just said, if you're this child's mother, if you don't speak up for her, who will? Of course we'll help you. Let's get you some formula. Let's get you a sewing project, and let's get you sewing so that you can make sure that your little girl has the milk she needs, has the food she needs. So that's what we're about. We're about helping these mothers and helping these children. And since then, now Joanna, when I see her, she laughs, she smiles, she comes up, she doesn't look at me like she's worth any less. She puts her arm around me and we talk like friends, because that's what we are, we're friends. These are some of our most immediate needs. Sometimes I put our immediate needs on our website. And our most immediate need was that this week on Monday, all of our kids started back to school. Well, education under 6th grade may be free, but you have to come with all of your school supplies, and they require all the children to have a uniform. And so that's about $40 out of pocket. Well, I had one lady who was rotating her children. So by the time that her oldest daughter was in 4th grade, she's 14 years old. Well, you can't be 14 years old in a 4th grade class, because that just makes you embarrassed. And before you know it, you're dropping out. So, and that's because she could only afford to send one child a year to school just because of those school supply fees. They call them utility fees. And so we just make sure that everybody can pay for their children. Some of our women will say, hey, I've saved and I have the money. And others are like, you know what, I have 4 kids and I can only pay for 2 of them. We just make sure that everybody has their school supplies and their uniforms. And that's what just happened. So we just sent 50 kids all of their school supplies, and well, we didn't send them school supplies. We gave the money to the mother to go buy, and then they send us receipts, they send us pictures to let us know that they were able to buy the things that were needed for their child. So that just happened this week. That was really exciting. Everybody wants to know what they can do. Usually I just keep this down to 3 things, but I'm going to let you know what you can do. First of all, go to our website, onecommonthread.org, make a purchase. We even have quilt tops, unfinished quilt tops. I mean, it's all sewn together. All you have to do is long arm quilt it yourself. And for those of you who have your own long arm machines or quilting machines and want to do it, we have some of those unfinished quilt tops for you. We also do have a lot of finished quilts. We have all of our hexagon kits. They come with all the pre-basted hexagons in the kits. We have so many amazing products. If you can't afford anything, that is okay. You can also just go on to one of our social media platforms on Facebook and on Instagram. We're One Common Thread Quilts. Let me tell you, I don't just promote our products on One Common Thread Quilts. I try to let people know everyone's story. We want to make sure that you know who these women are, because if you know them, you'll love them, you'll want to support them. These are real people with real problems. You don't not get cancer if you're living in poverty. You don't not, well, I mean, almost everyone is getting abused. It's a really sad situation. You aren't immune from other tragedies just because you're living in poverty. And so these ladies, they need our help. So if you can just promote by sending, we're almost about hit 10,000 followers, and we would just love for you to follow us, learn more about their stories, learn more about our women. We have a donation tab. We also have the opportunity for quilt guilds or groups of women with lots of stashes. If you want to put together a quilt design, like we have all of the quilt designs on our website. You just go to our website, go under tutorials, and you'll see all of our designs under there. If you want to print one out, then you and your friends can go through your stash and say, hey, I have enough for the 400 greens, so I can make a kit, and then I can just send those kits to Courtney and here in Texas, and I'll take that down to Honduras, and that will save me, because guess what? I'm the one with a few volunteers that I can rummage around this area. We put together quilt kits, and that's what we take down to the women to make into quilts. And that is so helpful. But if you just can't make a quilt kit to be sent down, you can always just send us your scraps. If you can cut them, if they're less than 1/4 of a yard, then that makes it even easier for me. And if you email me, I will send you all of this information as well. We also have, if you see a need, and you have an opportunity, if you're some sort of influencer or know somebody, we don't look for people with 100,000 followers. We're looking for people with just like 2,500 followers, because we know that those are genuine followers. We know they're real people. And if you want to do a giveaway with us, contact me. We can do a giveaway. But talk about us with your friends, because in all honesty, all the success we've had has become from one person talking to one person who shares with somebody else. And then they'll contact us and say, hey, I didn't know you were doing this, but here, my quilt guild is putting together a bunch of kits, and we're going to send you 25 kits. That is a huge blessing for me, especially if you've got a gift for putting colors together. And you quilters, you're amazing.